You'll have to excuse the wind, but for this week's review, we've got an all-new 2019 Mazda 3. So the Mazda 3 is fully redesigned for 2019, so it uses the same engine and transmission out of the outgoing previous generation Mazda 3, but other than that, it's pretty much all new. The big addition to the new generation Mazda 3 is the addition of available all-wheel drive, and this one has all-wheel drive. It's also obviously a sedan model. It wouldn't be my choice. I think I would go with the hatchback, and that's probably what I would recommend most people choose for themselves as well, just because the hatchback is way more practical and I think a better overall value. I like to be able to stash things like bikes and TVs and furniture in my vehicles, and the hatchback allows for that. But either way, the sedan and the hatchback are pretty much the same, aside from the obvious. They offer the same packages, the same available features, and this one is fully loaded. It comes in at around $31,000. We'll take a look at the window sticker in a minute, but overall, it's pretty impressive. So the last Mazda 3, my wife owns a 2014 Mazda 3, which was the first model year of the last generation, and I also was able to drive a 2018 Mazda 3 fully loaded, so the last model year of the last generation, and I was really impressed with both of them. They offered features that were a little bit nicer than what you expected, all at a really competitive price. I'm impressed with this one as well. I will say though that I came into this wanting to evaluate it as a luxury vehicle. I think the last generation of Mazda 3s, you got into them thinking you were getting into an economy car, and you were pleasantly surprised by how many luxury car features it had, and just the build quality was really nice. The materials used were of a very high quality. This one, I went into it expecting a luxury car, which is kind of interesting to have those two different expectations with a vehicle, and evaluating this thing as a luxury car now, going into it, I think it's still really good. I have found a couple areas that I think could still be improved, but then when you consider that fully loaded this thing comes in at around $30,000, I think it's still pretty impressive. We'll take a look at the exterior first. Obviously, this one is finished in Mazda's kind of trademark or on-brand crystal red soul metallic color. I know I'm not getting that name correctly, but it's some combination of those words. But it's about a $600 option, and if you're into red, I think it's kind of worth it. It's a super deep finish. It's beautiful color. I know looks are subjective, but it really captures the eye, especially when it's clean. Anyway, kind of a unique design feature that I noticed right off the bat. If you look at the front of this thing, the leading piece of bodywork is all the way up here. You know, in most cars you'd expect a bumper down here, but it's kind of been a design trend as of late to design vehicles with these really sharp drop-offs up front, and I think that's pretty evident on this one. But if you were to say be in a parking garage and pull too far forward, I just think it's kind of crazy that the first thing that would hit is this piece up here. Moving on. So this design is more evolutionary rather than revolutionary. It has a more premium feel than the outgoing Mazda 3, but the outgoing Mazda 3 was pretty attractive in and of itself, and this one just kind of builds on that. I like the front end, very chrome, nice big opening up front. Your fog lights are located down here. Wheels are 18 inches. I think Mazda could have slapped a set of 19s or even 20s on this thing. I think that it would really give it an even more premium feel, especially given that this is the fully loaded version. Another thing I noted, I was on the online configurator for this vehicle earlier, and Mazda seems to be moving away from trim levels in favor of packages, which is something that luxury automakers offer, like Audi and Lexus and the like. They offer packages rather than trims, and I think that kind of is an indicator of Mazda's desire to rebrand itself as a luxury automaker. Around back, you've got a new font for the Mazda 3 as well. I'm sure that as Mazda redesigns more of its vehicles, it'll move to wordmark style as opposed to the older style featured on older vehicles. Skyactiv G, I'm not sure what exactly that implies. To me, all that really matters is fuel economy and power, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Dual exhausts on this thing. Under the hood is the old school 2.5. I won't call it old school, but it's been around for a while in Mazda's. 2.5 liter 4-cylinder. Around back here, you'll notice that there's no handle for the trunk mechanism. The button is actually hidden under the logo here, right there. Pop the trunk, so it opens electronically, but it doesn't close. It's not power close or power opening. But you can see back here, there's a decent amount of space. You know, pretty standard. You can actually put the seats down from back here, which is convenient. Not much else to see back here though. Moving around. Fuel door is push operated, which is nice. Get the back angle here. Sorry, we're kind of looking into the sun. I think that about does it for the outside though. Now we will step inside. Okay, climbing into the cabin where it's much quieter. And the first thing we'll notice is the, I'm going to call it white interior, which I really love. This red on white Mazda color scheme is one of my favorites in the entire automotive industry. It feels really airy in here. It feels cooler especially than in a vehicle that would have a black interior. And altogether, inside of this thing is pretty nice, pretty comfortable. Go ahead and start it up. So I really don't understand that chiming. I haven't put my seatbelt on yet, but I'm not sure if that's a quality control issue that isn't actually supposed to be happening. But every time you start this vehicle up, you get that seatbelt chime, which is, the order of operations is off with that, because typically you get in a vehicle, turn it on, and then put your seatbelt on. So I think how that should function is once you put the car in drive, that chiming should go off. I think that's how most cars work. It's not something you really pay attention to though, until a car does something as obnoxious as chiming at you every single time you start it up. So I'm not sure if that might be a programming error or something with this vehicle. Anyway though, onto the important stuff. Really high quality materials are used throughout this cabin. Up here is kind of a leathery rubber feel. It's kind of it's not a hard plastic, but it's an area that generally, you know, is plastic, and this is just a soft touch plastic that they used. Same with right here. This looks like two different pieces, but I think it's really pretty much one piece. This is leather, which is nice. It's a soft touch leather. The door is a black leather. I like how they've integrated the door handles into this trim piece here, and I also think that these speaker grills give a really, really upscale feel. You can get a better view of this one over here, but it's a design style that you find in some Mercedes-Benz vehicles, which I really like. The new G-Wagon comes to mind there. Anyway, this is padded, this armrest. It's really, really squishy padding, excuse me. I've never noticed an armrest that is this padded, but you know, as long as it holds up over time, I think that's a nice comfort enhancing thing to add. Leather here, leather here. This is a piano black finish right here, and they actually use it on the center console, and I'm not sure if you can see. I think you actually can, but this vehicle only has, let's see, 3,900 miles in the odometer, and you can see that this console is already really scratched up. So I actually think that's a kind of a poor design choice on this thing. If it's this scratched at under 4,000 miles, just think of how scratched it'll be at 40 or 80,000. But anyway, moving on. Steering wheel's a fun design. It's really clean. It's kind of, I don't know, kind of has an aviation feel to it. But nice button layout. Yeah, the buttons feel solid. They do feel premium. Circular center on the steering wheel. This one has paddle shifters. The gauge cluster here this is a mechanical gauge, this is a mechanical gauge, this is a physical plastic ring right here, but if you look closely, you can see that this is actually a screen back here, and you can change what's behind it. Kind of cool. But yeah, that allows the gauge cluster to be configurable, so you can cycle through some different options and things there. Navigation screen's really nice, actually. It sits back kind of atop the dashboard, which is a pretty common thing with new vehicle designs today. And you control the infotainment screen via this dial right here. You don't actually touch it. I know in previous generation Mazdas, they used this control dial, but they also used a touchscreen. And if you'll notice, this one is no longer a touchscreen. So you've got to go rely on this dial and this dial only. But I find it to be really easy to use. I know some people, I think BMW iDrive set a really, really, really poor standard for these. And I think a lot of people think back to that era of the late 90s, early 2000s when it comes to using these kind of setups here. But I find this one to be really intuitive and actually pleasant to use. So I will demonstrate some things here. You've got a dial that you can also click with. Got a back button. I think that's to maybe send text messages, audio, and then a home button right here. And your volume controls and like radio tuning and multimedia controls are right here as well. And then this is a favorites button. So we'll play around a little bit here. This thing has, I know it's hard to see, but you've got information, entertainment, communication, navigation, and settings. The new Mazda 3 has Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So that's a nice inclusion. There's a look at the maps. Again, you can't really see them, but it's a pretty clean design. The screen is really long and rectangular, so you'll notice it comes to here and then about down here. So I think maybe a little more height might be appreciated. The map is very long and narrow, but either way, it works. It's high resolution. It feels modern. And altogether, it's pretty easy to use, so I give this infotainment system a thumbs up. Beyond that, I mentioned before, powertrain's the same as in the outgoing Mazda 3, so it's a 2.5-liter four-cylinder under the hood with, I have the Windows sticker here, 186 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque. So I know this window sticker isn't very easy to read because it's just a photocopy, but the MSRP on this vehicle is $27,900, and that is, I believe, with the premium package and all-wheel drive. And then this thing has some accessories on it that bring the price tag up to about $31,000. So $31K for this thing. Again, I would definitely opt for the hatchback, but you know, not everybody likes hatchbacks, and this is kind of a fun middle of the road economy car to luxury compact sedan. So it offers a lot of luxury features at an economy car price. So HVAC controls right here. So one thing I loved, I noticed on my wife's 2014 Mazda 3, two things actually. The hazards button and the sunglass holder were like the most blissful designs I've ever experienced. Like the functionality was so precise. It was unrivaled, I have to assume, by any other button designs in the entire auto industry, and I will argue that going forward. They were awesome. These have actually taken a little step back. So one of my favorite things about the old hazards button was that it was just on off, super precise, no movement, a really pleasant like high quality sound and everything. And this one's still, it has some of that, but the button wiggles a little bit in a way that the previous design did not. So I'm one of only a few people who probably notice, let alone care about things like that, but it was worth mentioning. I was kind of surprised to see that both of these features are a little just more average in this vehicle when they were so great in the outgoing Mazda 3. Here's the sunglass holder. It still feels really precise. Comes down slowly, you know, it's nice. The latch, really precise, really consistent, but there's just a little bit of play in it. You can actually hear, the springs when you go to close it. Now, sound wasn't present in the outgoing one. Anyway, not extremely relevant, but worth mentioning either way. One of the accessories this thing has is a wireless charger. Cars, have to have wireless chargers today, I guess. But it's a good feature in theory, but it's located in the center console, and I have to think that Mazda, I don't know, they probably didn't have anywhere else to put it. I think their official PR line would be that, oh, well, we want to encourage people to put their phones away while they're driving. And I guess, but I'd rather choose to do that on my own. I don't need an automaker to force me to do that. And for me, in order for this wireless charger to have any value whatsoever, and it's like $285, I think, on the accessory sheet, in order for it to have any value to me, it needs to be located up here where I can just easily toss it up there when I'm not using it. But Mazda opted to put it in here, and I just don't think it would ever really be as useful in the center console as opposed to in this storage cubby up here, which is really big. So there's storage back here. It's kind of hard to see. There's a rubber lined storage bin here, and then right up here are the cup holders. And I don't really love the placement of the cup holders up here. You have to reach, you have to navigate around the shifter to put things up there. And then when you're pulling it out, you have to tilt it toward you first in order to not come into contact with these buttons right here. So I would argue that this is poor placement for these cup holders. I'd rather they be pretty much anywhere else, or at least do something here so that they're not behind the shifter and underneath the center stack here, because they're just not as easy to use in this location. As with on the previous Mazda 3, since this thing uses the same 6-speed automatic transmission found on that vehicle, you get a little sport switch right here. All this does is turn on and off sport mode, but it's a nice switch. Give you a listen there. That actually feels really precise. Another Mazda quirk is that on the automatic transmissions, manual shift mode on most vehicles, downshift is back, upshift is forward. On Mazdas, though, they're reversed. So upshift is this way, downshift is forward. Just a little Mazda quirk right there. The air vents on this vehicle are kind of funky. So for the driver, they're laid out on either side of the gauge cluster here. So you get one there, one there. For the passenger, I do like this design. They're right in front of the passenger, kind of on this second tier of this tiered dashboard design right here. So you get one vent here, and then visually they're joined by this plastic piece that's made to look like a vent. It's not actually a vent, but it kind of ties this whole area together right here. And it's kind of a cool design feature. This frameless rear view mirror is an accessory as well. Looks clean, you know. This thing has a pretty comprehensive suite of active safety features. So you've got blind spot monitoring, automatic emergency braking, radar cruise control, automatic high beams, lane departure warning, lane keep assist. Things that are on any vehicle costing over $30,000 today, aside from like trucks and specialty vehicles, they all pretty much offer this at this point. So, you know, worth mentioning that the Mazda has it, but not really something that sets it apart from the crowd. This thing has heated seats. It does not have ventilated seats. It doesn't appear that ventilated seats are available on this vehicle at all, which is really weird. The new Kia compact sedan that's slipping my mind at the moment has ventilated seats, and it even has heated rear seats. So worth noting that this vehicle does not include them. We'll hop out here and take a look at the back seat. Not a whole lot going on back here. It's a compact car, so not a ton of room. I have the seat in the position I'd have it in if I were driving, and you can see how much room's back here. So the bottom of the seat back kind of comes into contact with my shins. My knees have enough room. My feet do fit under there, but just, not a huge range of motion. Fine for short to medium length trips, but after a while I'd probably start to feel a little claustrophobic back here. We'll move this uniquely designed center console lid. That's one thing I forgot to show you. So to use the center console lid, actually slides back and then pivots down. So I don't know if you can see that. Unique, definitely unique. No air vents back here, no USB ports, no outlets, no heated seats, just a blank center console piece right there. Other than that, there's really nothing back here. Center armrest does have two cup holders in it. Beyond that, though, not much else. I think the front seat passengers in this vehicle are going to be much more coddled than the backseat passengers. But anyway, sunroof up top, white headliner that matches the white seats, or at least pretty much white, as white as I think you'd ever want in a mainstream car. But yeah. One more thing up front here. This vehicle uses what I think is the same sun visor found in the old Mazda 3. And while it does extend, it uses these dumb tabs to do so. I would prefer that it pull out on the attachment point here, like pull out from there, like, because that gives you better coverage. You're kind of losing all this up here. This isn't really doing you much good. While over here, this little dumb tab thing fails to actually, cover that little slot where sun can get in and cover that area. And if you're driving down the highway, southbound late in the day and the sun's coming in this side of the vehicle, this part will still drive you nuts. So I'd like to see that made a little bit better, but at least it extends. Not all cars extend. So as we start to wrap up here, my take on the new Mazda 3. It occupies a weird space. In the luxury car segment, if we were to view this through the luxury car lens, I know Acura offers a compact sedan. Lexus does not. They have the UX and the NX, which are a subcompact and a compact SUV, but Lexus doesn't offer a compact sedan. Buick used to. Pretty certain that they don't anymore, but just that statement right there tells you how relevant Buick is today. And then I guess the Audi A3, this vehicle with all-wheel drive now, and the fact that it is a pretty upscale, trendy, dignified design, I think it could be seen as a lower cost alternative to the Audi A3, but the future of the Audi A3 is even in question right now. So I think as a result of that, the Mazda 3 is kind of an upscale alternative in reality to more mainstream compact sedans like the Honda Civic, Toyota Corolla, the Hyundai Elantra, whatever that Kia is. But when you look at it that way, I think this car presents a really good value. It's maybe a little bit more expensive than those vehicles, but not by much. And this interior is a lot nicer than what you're going to get with any of those vehicles. That said, the powertrain is okay. This thing gets 28 miles per gallon combined, which, in order for that to be okay, you really have to look at it through the luxury car lens, and this isn't exactly a luxury car powertrain. It's a naturally aspirated 2.5-liter four-cylinder that makes 186 horsepower and is paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission. That's nothing revolutionary. That said, I think the inclusion of all-wheel drive will get this vehicle into the consideration set of a lot of buyers who wouldn't consider it if it were front-wheel drive only. And then, like I said before, I think the hatchback is without question the one to buy. In terms of Mazda's ascension up the luxury car ranks, I alluded to this in the intro. I looked at the old Mazda 3 as an economy car that offered a luxury car experience. And I was really, really impressed by the outgoing Mazda 3 because I had really low expectations for it. I had economy car expectations for that vehicle. This vehicle, it was like, okay, so Mazda has kind of showed its hand with the old Mazda 3 in pushing it really far up market. This one, I got into it wanting it to be a luxury car vehicle, and I think it really does improve on things in a lot of ways. This is a luxury car cabin. I think 80% luxury car feel, and the quality I think is getting there. There's a couple little quirks with this thing. Like, I noticed the center console isn't exactly centered. I know it's hard to show, but it rubs with the seat right here. So when you move the rear seat back up and down, we'll do it right here. Hear the squeaking? It actually rubs a little bit against the center console, so it's not perfectly centered. There's that weird chiming thing that was going on when I got into the vehicle. I think there's something wrong with the seatbelt sensor order of operations there. And then earlier, a couple days ago, I had the key in my pocket, went up to the door to unlock the vehicle. You know, my pocket was 6 inches away from the handle and it wouldn't unlock, so I had to use the remote. So just a couple little weird things. I know new car designs tend to have their quirks, but just a couple of things I noticed. Nothing that I think is indicative of the vehicle's design or anything being subpar, but just a couple little things I noticed. But yeah, I think this car is still, if you were to look at economy cars and luxury cars, I think the Mazda 3 is somewhere right here. It's on the cusp of being a luxury car. It's pretty much there. I think there are just some things like the powertrain and certain design choices that I think still are probably works in progress with really getting this car up to the luxury car standard. Hopefully once it gets there, the compact sedan segment still exists. I'm really curious to see what like the Mazda CX-30, I think it is, the new compact coupe style SUV. I'm really curious to see what that's like on the inside, given that that thing is all new. But altogether, this thing is a really strong effort. If you're in the market for a sedan, I think that Mazda still offers an incredible value by offering a borderline luxury car experience at a really competitive mainstream car price. And I think this vehicle continues to push that sentiment forward. So yeah, couple little quirks, couple things that I think need work, but still, given that this thing is $30,000, $31,000, I think it's pretty easy to give it a resounding thumbs up.